Hey, this is Matt. Once again, we're about to video. This is a paid request this time for Travis. Thank you so much for that. For those interested in requesting any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And this is for Salem's Lot, the 2024 version of the story, which I know there's the original miniseries, which also had a shorter version, directed by Toby Hooper. There was another version with Rob Lowe. I think like Rutger Hauer and other stuff. Like I don't think I ever saw that one. And then this one. Now before I start, thank you Travis, and for those interested in requesting any type of videos, PayPal, CashApp, Patreon, all those are options. PayPal is usually the best option though. PayPal. Links are down below in the info box if you wish to, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Now, I never read the original book, the story. I don't remember caring for the Toby Hooper one, just thinking it was kind of boring. Although I like the look of the vampire. Never saw the Rob Lowe one. So I'm not the guy that's the definitive expert. Far, far from it. This was, I guess, at one point going to go into theaters, but then things changed and it went straight to HBO Max streaming. I think it has like a 5.4 or something on IMDb, and it seems a pretty lukewarm to mixed response. And I can understand where I don't hate the film, but maybe I would say it's mediocre at best. Maybe. Because, number one, it was kind of interesting to see the New Line Cinema logo again. Because I keep forgetting they're long gone, but oh no, they're okay. So that kind of brought me back to see the New Line Cinema logo. But it's one of those things where it has weird pacing. It feels like a bunch of stuff was cut, and I guess because like the story's so lengthy, they had a mini series back in the day, that it feels like we're jumping ahead on certain points. They go, how did he come to that conclusion? Or how did he get to that point? Oh, wait, we're just jumping a week later? That kind of feels like things are not properly built up as they should. Now, I don't mind the cast for the most part. There's Lewis Pullman as this writer Ben, who's come into town, Jerusalem's Lot, because he lived there when he was like 9 or so years old, and he wants some inspiration. You have this kid, Mark, who is getting bullied, but he gets the bully and makes him say uncle. You have this girl who kind of hits on our writer, and they become eventually a bit of an item. Alfre Woodard, good actress. She's the doctor of the town. William Sadler, nice to see him in there from Die Hard 2 and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. He's in here as the sheriff. You have this guy who's I think his name is Matt, who's a teacher. And then you have our villains. You have the human servant, and then you have the vampire himself. Interesting that they still have it take place in the 1970s. So I thought that was kind of interesting to have it take place in that time period. I like the song at the beginning and end of the movie, which is Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot. I thought that kind of fit with the tone, with the environment that's being showcased in the movie. But it's one of those films, like the look of the film, like at the beginning where these two guys have to deliver this crate to the cellar of this house on the hill, and there are times where it's nighttime, but I don't know what it is with so many films that either straight to streaming or end up on streaming. They'll show these night scenes where they look fake. They look heavily digital. I call it like it's the streaming look. I don't know what it is. Not every one has that. Every movie has it, but a lot of them do. And I don't know, just the way it's filmed, because it's filmed on digital, of course, or just the way it's lit, or just maybe a lot of this was done digitally where they weren't really outside, or they were outside but they throw so much digital stuff and fog and stuff in there that it makes it seem like they're on a green screen. Or I don't know what it is. It just kind of takes me out of it. So I don't really feel much atmosphere, dread, or creepiness in this movie because of that. Even some of the daylight scenes when the characters are looking up at the house on the hill, you tell a lot of that was digital. Especially in the background, I should say. And that's during the daytime. So it's one of those things that just doesn't really create that. Again, I'm kind of not feeling as much because I just notice things that if they're not fake in digital, they look like that. So I'm not as involved, I'm not as pulled into the story as I should be. I don't know if that makes sense, or I don't know how better to explain that. And that's the thing, is that you have quite a bit of characters to kind of deal with. I mean, the writer, the girl he meets, the kid Mark. You have this doctor, you have this teacher, you have people like William Sadler. You have these other kids who Mark meets and are become pretty much our first victims. So there's a lot of people to kind of try to develop, and because it's an under 2 hour movie, like I say, it feels like a lot of stuff's left out. Like in the first hour of the film, Mark, who is one of our main characters, it's an hour in, he's had like 3 scenes. A scene where he beats up a bully who is messing with him. A scene where he walks home and shows the other 2 kids some of his little monster stuff, including his little graveyard with a cross and stuff. And then, when the vampire kid tries to get in his room, but then that little cross, affects it and fucks off. And that's what I mean, is you didn't get a lot of build up with the kid. Even with the writer, he arrives and he talks a bit, but then there are times it feels like he disappears, or he's not really doing anything but twiddling his thumbs. Like, okay, he's at the drive-in with this lady, or he's kind of just in the background, kind of doing nothing, and I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things I have to rewatch the Toby Hooper Salem's Lot, because it's been a while since I've seen it. To be fair, to be fair, it's been a long time since I've seen that. So maybe this would have worked as, you know what? I think this is one of those cases it would have worked better. And you know how I've said the opposite of this, but there are always exceptions. That's why I bring it up. If this was a 8 episode, 7 episode show, I think this would have worked better, because it would give things ability to breathe. And when you give them a bit room to breathe, then I'll care a bit more about the characters. I'll have a bit of a flow. But you have to do it well. You have, like True Detective. I keep mentioning that season 1. That was fairly well done. If that was just a 2 hour movie, I don't know if it'd be as good. But in that, I'm like, okay, yes, Sally's sometimes seems to get a bit too padded when you do that kind of stuff. But I think in this instance, it would have give a bit, at least a better development of the character. So, for example, a kid gets taken and, bitten, then it jumps to a week later. Like, all of a sudden we're a week later. I'm like, whoa, we're 1 week later? Like, isn't this like some important bits of info of Mark finding out that the kid he just met has disappeared and what's going on with the kid, and question the writer, hey, you're new in town, and no, instead the writer goes, oh yeah, he questioned me. Yeah. And, I had someone with me. But the fact we've jumped to a week, I'm just almost was a bit jolting in a way. And then as the story progresses, the writer Ben meets this teacher, and the one who's been bitten, his brother gets grabbed, and then he starts turning, and he's in the hospital, and then he dies. They're burying the kid. There's this guy at the cemetery who fell asleep. That's another thing. I don't know if this was in the source material, but I guess he's supposed to finish the job, like it's the funeral. So he sits by a tree, and apparently he just passed out. Just when he wakes up, like no one bothered to wake him up. No one bothered to go, hey, you did fill the hole up now. Like everybody just left. They didn't go, where's that guy at? And oh shit, hey buddy, you fill up the hole now, because it's a fucking burial of this little kid. I think the parents were like, it covered a bit sooner than later, but no one bothered to check on that. The guy fell asleep. Then that's the thing, when he's at nighttime, that's one of those scenes where everything at night looks fake. It just looks like... I'm not saying this is what happened, but it looks like he's on a green screen. I don't know what that is. I don't understand why films look that way. Or maybe it was on green. I don't know. Then ultimately he did spit. Like, Alfre Woodard becomes an important character. I don't know if we see her much of any in the first hour of the film. I'm trying to think. Do we see her in the first hour? Very, very, very briefly. That's the thing, is that you have these characters that's going to be... And I do think the reason I don't hate it is I did not mind the third act. While it does have some pretty sketchy CGI, I don't mind the third act of the film. I don't mind that. I thought that was fairly well handled, and at least have a decent third act. That's better than a lot of other movies. And like I said, I liked Lewis Pullman as the writer Ben. I thought he was natural. I didn't mind the little kid Mark. I would say those were the two better characters, and because those are thankfully the two were kind of left at the end. Oh, sorry, spoilers. I mean, part of me is like, well, is it spoiling because there's been two other versions and there's the original story? But, spoilers throughout going forward. You do have the scene where the vampire kid visits Mark by the window. But even then, it just has this digital look that just doesn't have as much of an impact to me. I don't mind the idea that if someone's hypnotized, you see their eyes kind of... this glaze that kind of fills the iris to show the audience, okay, this person's affected, this person's hypnotized. One thing that was a bit confusing is he backs up, and I guess because there's a cross on his desk, it glows. But it seems as if you need faith, you need to believe in order to do that. But the kid was hypnotized, so if he was hypnotized, he wouldn't be thinking of anything. But then the cross still glowed? Because it seems like throughout, like the cross... I do like the idea of the cross glowing. I think that's a cool visual that I haven't seen done a whole lot. I guess I think of like The Fog, John Carpenter with the gold cross that glows. It reminds me of that. I think that's a cool effect. Simple, but it looks neat. It looks really neat, but Like, it's like depending on who does what. Like, you can't put two things together. It won't work. They have to be bound with tape, which leads to an interesting scene. So there's certain rules to this thing. But like a priest has it, but it's not working because he doesn't have faith. But in this kid, when he backs up, he's not holding the thing, which seems like you have to do. I say that for other times you have to hold it to do it, or you have to have faith to do it. But this kid's not touching it, and it just glows. And it's like, it seems like it's convenient to work for whatever the scene wants it to work or not work. Very complicated work. Like the cross stuff has very complicated rules. At least to me. But this is what I'm talking about, like things that tend to feel rushed. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Like the teacher, there's this guy who he sees at the bar, who's the guy digging the hole for the grave. He got bit. Let me take you back. He knows something's up. Calls the writer. They go in. Seems like the guy's died. They call in the doctor. They call in William Sadler. One leads to another. People have left. The teacher's at his home. And then there's the vampire again. And immediately, this teacher knows to grab a cross and say the words, "I revoke my invitation." How did he know saying that would work? That I revoke my invitation? I like the idea that a vampire could be so repelled like a magnet and be pushed out. I like that idea. But how the hell did this guy know to say, "I revoke my invitation"? I didn't even think of that. I mean, we all know about vampires. How many of us would think of that? I mean, it's an interesting idea that you just revoke it and then... But it's like, immediately they know it's vampires. Immediately they know what to do and all that other stuff. Yeah, this supposed to take place in the 1970s. So, I mean, hell, this is before Fright Night. I mean, obviously by this point, Dracula and Christopher Lee films had come out, of course, so they would know that. Maybe the guy's just a big fan of Peter Cushing, so I'll chalk her up to that. But it seems like things are a bit rushed. Like maybe the guy would know and then like do a little bit of research. And okay, it says that you could do this, says you could do that. But this guy just knows automatically. It's okay. Well, I'm trying to remember. Was there a scene that he looked into it? Maybe there was. There may have been, but it just felt... It was like rushed by that I forgot. Perhaps that was the case. But yeah, I know I've just been being negative on it. Like I said, I like some of the cast members. I like certain scenes I like. I like when Alfre Wood is reaction to what's going on, when the body rises up and she's like, "What the hell?" And I like the idea that you can't just do this and it has to be bounded, so they're trying to rush to get it taped up, and they do it at one point, but then it breaks, so they gotta do it again. That helps create suspense. I like that idea. I like that moment. But then, like, people just know what to do. Like, how did they know that it's not working? It has to be bound. How did you come to that conclusion? Man, I mean, or when Alfre Woodard gets bit, how did she know to put a rabies shot in her? Like she says why, but I'm like, really? Like, this is a vampire bite, but somehow you're assuming, yeah, a rabies shot will help me. Something about the wound, and just seemed like a weird jump to get to. Maybe that's just me. And that's the thing, like, it'll show shots of the town, but I don't feel sad for this town dying because I barely know the town and the people in it. Like, you show a couple shots of them eating dinner, but that's about it. You don't really get a sense of the townsfolk and the kinship they have with each other, and so you feel the sense of sadness when Mormore's town has been killed and dead and destroyed and turned, and I just didn't feel a whole lot of that. Spoilers, some stuff I did like. Like I said, I did like the idea that, okay, you have to bound the cross and then it breaks and having to fix it. I like the boy, Mark, who's a bit of a badass. It does what needs to be done. So, like, the human servant grabs him, but he's able to escape and just beats the shit out of him to death. And then he goes in, just get the holy water, and by this point, it's like, no, this has to be done no matter what. But then you have scenes like, okay, well, actually, that's why. There's scenes I thought that could have been a bit longer. Like, there's a bit where Mark is in this tree house and the vampires are trying to get in. He closes all the little doors and he's able to stab one. But I guess I thought there'd be a bit more to that suspense of them trying to find ways to get in or them trying to find ways to wreck the treehouse. Like, they may not be able to get in because of invitation, but they could take the whole thing and topple it, wreck it, punch through it, something like that. Or topple the whole damn thing. So maybe there's some suspense you get out of that. There's the bit where Alfre Woodard and the writer hide in the church, and then William Sadler, who's been sort of a chicken shit character because he's ready to leave, we see him thrown through the church, through the glass, so you know he's dead. There's the bit you see in the trailer where the writer's running to the church, he gets grabbed, but then he stabs, and when he lands on the vampire. So I kind of like that, using the vampire as cushion for his fall. I thought it was a bit of a surprise when Alfie Woodard, again, the spoilers, when she gets killed because they realize the vampires are at the drive-in. At this point, it's the writer, the little kid, and Alfie Woodard, and she gets shot because the girl the writer likes, her mom is now the new human servant. And I like the kid Mark based on his actions. Like, he runs that bitch over with the car. And the writer has some moments to shine, and I like the idea of the finale taking place at a drive-in theater. I thought that was a cool choice for a location. And how, you know, the sun's going down a bit, so there's a bit of shade from the drive-in, and so the writer's trying to escape it, and he's killing a couple vampires, but he's trying to escape it, and the kid helps out. I do like the way the head vampire dies, where the is trying to get the kid, but then the writer pushes a stake right through the guy's mouth, the vampire's mouth. When it pulls out, there's a hole. And the kid looks through and he sees the writer. Then pulls the vampire and stakes his ass. Thought that was cool. But there's some bad CGI. There's bits when the kid screws up the drive-in, the topple it so the vampire's on fire. there's some horrendous CG fire in this. Like people set aflames. They look like George Romero's Survival of the Dead type of horrible CGI fire. So that's the thing is like, there's no sequel bait ending. There's no downer ending. I like that. I like the two that survive. Ben and Mark. I liked those characters. I liked those actors. I like that it ends with Sundown by Doran Lightfoot. At the end, it's just if this was better production value in terms of the night scenes and this awful CG fire, I hire a stuntman and put him on fire. That has happened many times before. Samurai Cop even did that. Granted, the guys like only put half of me on fire. But come on now. Slasher films back in the day had people on fire, like The Burning. Look at the beginning of The Burning. That's a slasher film from 1980 or so. That I guarantee you didn't have the budget of this. Shoot it at night. Create some dread, some atmosphere. Don't have the films feel so rushed. There had to have been something that went on with this movie where that's why I went to theater. I mean, that's why I went to streaming and not theaters. Again, is it a horrendous movie? No. Is there stuff I liked about it? Yes. Like I said, I liked the cross and stuff, certain scenes. For the most part, I like the third act, where characters, it's dwindled down, so we're concentrating on them and what they need to do. But it was never creepy or scary. And it needed room to breathe, in my opinion. It just needed some room to breathe. And that would have helped out things quite a bit. At least to me. At least in my opinion. So with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. And we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye for now.